Final update. My father secretly changed his will to leave everything to my stepmother, saying, "You're young, you'll figure it out." I walked away without a fight and let her enjoy her victory. A year later, she called me frantically. "Why is the bank freezing my accounts?" She nearly screamed over the phone. I smiled and said, "Check the fine print." Part 2. I always thought my father was a fair man. He was strict, but he taught me discipline. He was successful, but he taught me the value of hard work. He was never the warmest person, but he made sure I never lacked for anything, or at least, that's what I believed until the day he died and I found out exactly what he thought of me. My father had remarried after my mother passed away when I was 16. His new wife, Sarah, was barely older than me. She was young, beautiful, and manipulative in a way that was both impressive and terrifying. She knew how to make people like her, how to play innocent, and how to be exactly what someone wanted. My father, an older wealthy businessman, wanted a charming, loving wife who made him feel young again. And Sarah? She wanted a lifestyle she could never have achieved on her own. I tried to keep my distance from their relationship. When I turned 18, I moved out for college and built my own life. I visited for holidays, called on birthdays, and played the role of the dutiful son, even when I saw the way Sarah inserted herself into everything. But I never imagined she would take everything when my father died. It wasn't a surprise that he had been battling an illness for a few years, and we all knew it was coming. But I was blindsided when the lawyer read his will. Everything, his house, his investments, his businesses, his savings, everything was left to Sarah. I remember sitting there in stunned silence as she placed a hand over her mouth, pretending to be shocked. "Oh, darling," she whispered, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, as if this was some great burden she had been forced to carry. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There's a message from your father recorded in his own words." A video played on the screen in the lawyer's office. My father, looking frail but still sharp-eyed, stared into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone," he said. "And I have no doubt my son is angry right now, but listen to me, I built this fortune with my own hands, and I have the right to leave it to whomever I see fit. You're young, you'll figure it out. I know you have the brains and ability to make your own way in life. Sarah stood by my side through sickness and health, and she deserves this." He ended it with a nod, as if that was the final word on the matter. The lawyer asked if I wanted to contest it. I looked at Sarah, who was gripping the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles were white. She was waiting for me to fight her, waiting for me to start a war. I didn't. I stood up, nodded at the lawyer, and walked away, no anger, no argument, just gone. She won, or at least she thought she did. She got the house, she got the cars, she got everything my father had spent decades building. And I? I walked away with nothing but my pride. For a year, I focused on myself. I built my career, worked harder than ever, and let her believe she had outsmarted me. Then, exactly 1 year after my father's death, Sarah called me. She was frantic, panicked. "Why is the bank freezing my accounts?" She nearly screamed over the phone. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile creeping onto my face. "Check the fine print," I said. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "What did you do?" she asked. "Oh, Sarah, this isn't about what I did, it's about what my father did. Because here's the thing, my father might have thought I was young and would figure it out, but he still left me with something. He taught me how to read between the lines, how to pay attention to the little things." And Sarah? She had never bothered to check the fine print. Sarah went quiet on the phone, and I let the silence stretch. I knew she was frantically checking the bank records, going through documents she never thought to read properly. I could imagine her perfectly, sitting in my father's grand office, eyes darting over paperwork, her breath coming faster as the realization sank in. "You're lying," she finally said, but there was no confidence in her voice. I chuckled. "Am I?" I heard rustling papers being flipped, the clicking of her laptop keys, and then a choked gasp. I leaned forward, enjoying the moment. "Did you find it? The trust?" she whispered. Bingo. My father, in all his wisdom, had left her everything but with conditions hidden deep in the fine print, a legal trap she had never noticed. While the assets were in her name, they were held in a trust with strict conditions on withdrawals, sales, and transfers. And the trustee? Me. In short, she owned everything but had no control over it. "You didn't actually think my father would just hand over his life's work without strings attached, did you?" I asked. "You knew this whole time," she accused. "Of course, I did." Sarah had spent the last year parading around in luxury, acting like she had won without realizing she had been living off allowances I approved. The house was owned by the trust, the cars were technically not hers, the bank accounts she could use them until now. "You froze my accounts," she accused. "Correction," I said, "I exercised my legal right as trustee to limit access until a full audit is done." "She lost it. You little..." She cut herself off, probably realizing that insulting me wouldn't help her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "You don't want to do this. I can fight you in court," she threatened. I smirked. "Sure, but that would take years, and legal battles are expensive. How will you pay your lawyers if you can't touch the money?" Silence. I had her then. Her voice changed, she softened, switching tactics. "I took care of your father. You know I loved him," she said. I sighed. "Sarah, let's not do this. You and I both know what you loved." She tried a few more angles, pleading, threatening, even attempting to guilt-trip me about disrespecting my father's wishes. I let her talk, listening to the desperation creep into her voice. She wasn't just worried about money, she was terrified. She had enemies, debts, secrets. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't panicking because she lost access to my father's wealth, she was panicking because she owed someone. Now the real fun began. I decided to press her. Sarah, who do you owe? Her voice was too sharp, too defensive. I said, who do you owe? Because this was fear, not frustration, not anger, fear. I let the word hang in the air. She tried to deny it, but I could hear the cracks in her voice. I pushed harder. What did you do, Sarah? Nothing, she said, then a single broken whisper. I messed up. Now I was intrigued. I had expected greed, not desperation. What kind of mess up are we talking about? I asked. Shopping addiction, gambling, or did you promise something you couldn't deliver? She hesitated, then finally spoke. My father, she admitted. My real father. I frowned. What about him? Her voice cracked. He's not a good man. That was an understatement. I had done some digging on Sarah after the whole fiasco. Her father, Gerald, was a known scam artist, always involved in shady deals and barely staying out of prison. He had a long history of fraud, blackmail, and disappearing when things got too hot. I hadn't thought much of him until now. What did you promise him, Sarah? I asked. She took a shaky breath. I told him I'd get him money, a lot of it, and now that money is locked up. Yes, she exhaled slowly. How much? Another pause, then barely above a whisper, 2 million. I whistled. Damn, Sarah. She stopped herself. I thought I had time. That's when I understood, Sarah wasn't afraid of losing the house or the money, she was afraid of Gerald. And now I had leverage. So I said, leaning back, what's it worth to you? Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore, this was war. Sarah didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing fast and uneven, she was trying to think, to find a way out. But there was no way out, not for her. She needed me. I can fix this, she said quickly, almost like she was convincing herself. I just need you. Need access to the money, I finished for her. And you. You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 2.